Good morning.
Go.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Money in the Law on My FM 101.3, Holliston Cable Access Television. I'm John Drouin, one of your hosts, and I'm with Jay Marsden, who is the other more kind of prestigious host because he's getting close to his special time of St. Patrick's Day, which means he's going to shave off his beard and look like a normal human again. That's
No, not a normal human. A little bit of a more slimmed down version of a human. That's right.
Berry,
that's right.
Hibernator.
So for those of you who follow, this facial hair challenge that we go through every single year, what always happens is we get to February and I say to myself, all right, you know what? Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to shave the beard. And the way it works is right around November, as the fall New England crisp air starts to show up, I think to myself, could be a good time to grow a beard. So we do, or I do. You kind of do, I do. So we leave it rolling all through the winter, and then we get to around February, and I'm like, you know what? Get a couple of 50 or 60 degree New England curveball days in there, and I'm like, maybe it's time. And then what happens every year? Mother Nature drops about a foot of snow on us, beginning of March, and I say to myself, glad I kept the beard till the appointed time.
But how does it help? It doesn't help you.
Keeps you warm. Keeps you warm.
It doesn't keep you
warm.
warm.
Oh, stop. It does too.
I mean, it keeps you warm if you have a hat on and if you have like a face mask on. And
I wear a hat.
And
it's winter, I wear a hat. I'm good. I wear a hat.
Anyway, I think you just do it just for the look. I think you just do it. I think it's more of like the shock and awe effect. So you have look at me. Oh my God, I'm such this gross, grizzly old. And you think I'm homeless, and then bam, I shave off, and then bam,
I show up and I'm all.
I'm back.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, plus it shaves about 10 years off my life. My wife likes to say every year, you look 10 years younger without that beard.
Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you do that?
Yep. That's right. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. As always, Saturdays are my best day as opposed to Sunday. Although I do like Sunday. Sunday afternoons that's my favorite time of the week. Is Sunday afternoons.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But Saturday morning's good too because you feel like I get the whole. It's all in front of me. And what do I want to do more than anything is get to my is to do Money in the Law and kind of listen and talk about some of the things like that have to do with money, which. Of course, everybody loves talking about money.
Who doesn't love money?
And then, of course, I will bring in the law because everybody knows that...
Everybody loves breaking the law?
Everybody knows that you can't have too much fun with money without at least adhering to most or, if not all, of the law.
That's right. Okay. All right. So we are a nation of laws, as I like to say. I like to state quite a bit. We are a nation of laws, so it's important.
And you are good, too? You're good?
Everything's great. I'm good. We're ready to roll. It's March, springtime. It's right there. It's almost here. Next thing you know, all this snow will be out of here and the weather will be nice.
Yeah, we called to get it out of here. In fact, we're having all the stuff. We're having it plowed
snow all
removed. Yeah, we're having it removed. Right. I heated the yard last year. I put in solar heating so I can just actually melt my yard.
Don't laugh. I actually thought about, I don't have a swimming pool, but I actually thought about buying a solar cover that I could drag to different sections of the yard to facilitate getting the snow out of here sooner rather than later. And then I go out there with the bricks and the shoes like you're at the beach, put your 4 shoes in the corner of the blanket and then get all the snow moved out of here. And,
I'm sure that would work out really,
you throw
really
a barely weighted flip-flop on the corner of your blanket, and that's going to keep it from going anywhere. That type of scenario.
I'm sure that would be fun for the first time you did it. And then after that, you're like, oh my God, right? Because what also comes in the springtime is that thing called rain, like cold rain. So you say you don't have a swimming pool, you look outside, it sure will look like you do. Yeah.
Well, and that type of a project, I have at least admitted to myself that type of project where I go and buy a solar cover for the pool and then move it around the yard in an attempt to facilitate what Mother Nature's going to do on her absolute own. That's the province of retired folk who have nothing but time on their hands.
Nothing but time, and that's the biggest risk they're taking.
That's right. That's right.
What's going to happen? Nobody knows.
That's right. It's in the calendar. What are you doing? Oh, today's the first day. They have a name for it. They name it. They name it. It's a solar cover panel day. What are you talking about?
I'm taking Betty out of the garage, and we're going to get rid of the
drag that around the lawn.
Removal.
That's right. So I can facilitate the lawn cutting season. That's right. I'm going to move this all along.
I got to fertilize.
Yep. That's right.
I got to get phase 1 of my Scott's fertilizer down.
Step 1 done. Yeah. If you get behind on step 1, the whole rest of your summer, it's a waste.
You know what you could say? Grubs.
You might as well just...
you might as well, you're having
asphalt
grub salad.
You might as well asphalt the whole thing. You're crazy.
Parking lot.
It's a raccoon skunk festival out there.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Right.
All those crows that come it's a feast on your lawn. You know why? Those grubs are sick. Those grubs are eating each other. There's so many of them.
When I first moved to the burbs, I was out in the yard like, oh my God, I get gotta take care of the grubs. You get grubs, it's all over, right?
Over.
I was buying
Done.
in like 1,000, like, oh my God, that's the worst thing. That and childhood cancer
Yeah.
both need to be eradicated from the planet. Like it was the
One,
like, oh my
not
God,
one
like,
necessarily in front of the other,
I'm
right?
like,
Yeah.
oh, these are the
Grubs
worst.
are probably a little easier to take care of.
What are the
yeah.
worst things that could possibly happen to me out here, right? Grubs, and then grubs, right? It was
Grubs.
like baked into your brain, right? You're talking to your buddies, you're like, hey, did you get the Grubex done? You know the Grubex? Do you go Grubex? Do you go?
Yeah.
Do you go
I go-
Scots or do you go Lesco? Because
Oh,
Lesco, that's the really good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're Lesco, hey, he's real.
He's a guy who really wants. He wants to get rid of all the grubs.
He must be making some coin over there. He's using Lesco. He's not doing 4-step.
Either that, or you bring in, or you bring in an outside. You bring an outside vendor in, like somebody to spray, and they get in. I mean, they look like they're working down in down at whatever that place down in New Mexico.
They're planning
right?
for black lung.
They are.
I mean,
those
they are
guys
hazmated up.
They have hazmat suits over their hazmat
Yep.
suits, and they're spraying this stuff down. And the guy's like, "Oh, don't worry, it's good. No, this is good. Just keep the windows all closed for about an hour, and you'll be fine." And
As soon as I'm done, the kids and the dog can come out and run all over the lawn. You're all
That's right.
set.
That's
Piece of
fine.
cake.
It's going to rain in a week, so
Yep.
it'll rain it right in.
Yep, I'm going to put this sign that essentially says poison, stay away. Just
Yeah.
plant this right here so you'll know I was here. And then
Area 51 was the joke I was trying to tell before, and I missed it.
Why is your lawn
Area
glowing?
51.
That's
That's
Grub
yeah.
X. Grub X.
It's
Lighten that up.
Grubex Plus. Yeah.
Yep.
I
So-
have a buddy of mine who his career, his job is he manages like these prestigious golf courses. His name is Dave Ferrantino. I want to say his name on the radio.
Nice.
He
Okay.
lives in Millis. He's got and I'm going to tell him that he is being spoken about today.
Highly, by the way.
Dave Ferrantino. He is the grubs in this world worst nightmare. He's that guy who comes up to me, and he's the one who scared me in grubs. Like,
Oh, yeah.
hey, listen, what are we doing about the grubs? Like he'll come and he'll look on your lawn and be like, all right, here we go. This is what we need to do. And it's like, and literally, it's like he's got a cannon. Like,
First
he's
of
got
all,
grub access.
John, you should be embarrassed. All right, this lawn is an
Oh,
embarrassment.
don't.
Okay.
He doesn't have to tell you
Yeah.
to be embarrassed. He embarrasses you.
I was going to say, the look on his face, the pure disdain
Just
for
like,
the way you're
are you
handling.
kidding me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a responsibility that goes with this.
It's
Yeah.
like, you know what? No golf ball would ever touch this lawn. Ever.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah. We've been down the path. All right, down the path. All right, so what are we talking about today?
Well, we're talking about two things. I know you have an interesting topic. Again,
it's more than
an interesting topic of we've talked about kind of the importance of estate planning and it's in some ways it brings home the point when you can relate it to somebody who many people know when famous people unfortunately pass away. And we've had some conversations in previous shows about the immortal Prince when Prince passed away and how he did not have an estate plan.
Yep.
And we talked about Aretha Franklin when she passed away and how she had somewhat of a estate plan, a pretty good one, but not it wasn't fully comprehensive. So we're going to talk about another, unfortunately, a very young star. We say young because he's our age. Passed away recently. The great Luke Perry, who, and I don't know if you were do you watch the TV show Riverside?
No.
Yeah, so we do. And
Okay.
Riverside, and that was the first time I'd seen Luke Perry, since the old days, since
Since
90210.
90210 days?
That's right. And
Were
and
you
he-
looking for him?
And no, but I mean,
Okay,
if I bumped into him, I'd be like,
Probably
hey,
know who he
what's
was.
up?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So
Starbucks or something like that.
unfortunately, he played a great role in the show. One of the main stars of the show, and was making his comeback. And he didn't look like he was in bad shape. Didn't look like he was overweight or anything.
Looked better than me.
And unfortunately, he had at age 52 has a stroke,
Yep.
and so a good example. I mean, not a good example, but an example of somebody passing away suddenly. Somebody pass away unexpectedly.
Yes.
Somebody passing away who, where when you think about it, when you talk to somebody in their 40s and 50s and you say, hey, we need to put together an estate plan, in the back of their mind, they're like, okay, yeah, I need to do that. Yeah, that's good. There's no imminency of it.
Well, not only that, but not only is there no imminency of it, but these are also, again, think about a guy like Luke Perry, right? He makes his he makes his living, in the public eye, right? So there's an argument to be made that, that guy has a whole host of, he's potentially got a publicist, he's got a cook or a chef or a dietitian, or he's got a trainer for working out, to make sure that, he has an image to uphold, right? Not, not like a slovenly dressed, middle-aged attorney like myself, who doesn't have all of those things, right? So he's got a real reason to sort of, keep himself in tip-top shape. And to your point, somebody like him out of the blue has a stroke, and then you say to yourself, you know what? maybe it might be time to revisit whether or not
right.
I either need to get some planning if I don't have any, or it might be time to revisit whether or not the planning I did, and we'll talk a little bit about that as part of Luke Perry's situation, and whether or not that's enough, and whether or not I need to kind of buff that up a little bit and take it to the next level.
Yeah, and how many times have you seen in your practice, and we see it too, where people are like, oh yeah, I did my estate plan, we did it like right when the kids were born, and then they never go back and look at it, and someone say, I got a will, I even have a trust, and if you ask them how it works, they have no idea. They're like, I don't remember, I did it 10 years ago. And if you start asking them questions about it, like they don't know. Do you have a healthcare proxy? Probably not. If I do have a power of attorney, probably not. But in their mind, and I'm guilty of this too. And in my mind, do I think, I'm gonna get hit by a piece of Skylab tomorrow, and I'm gonna have to put this thing, remember, when people do an estate plan, you're putting this into effect in hopes that you are not using this for a very long time.
Oh, we tell everybody we talk to, the hope is that this sits on the shelf and gathers dust.
Yeah, the hope is that this thing is so old and so not to say outdated. Of course, it'll be relevant, but it'll look different than the one that you did 30 years later. It'll have the paper will be different. There'll be some fancy. This is old school.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's.
Did you like that? I was dusting. For those of you listening on the radio, I was dusting dust off my will and testament.
John doing housework, dusting off the will and the trust. They dust it off on a weekly basis. But you're right. And the other thing is, things change. People change. People who are involved in your plan change. Your kids get older, right? There's all kinds of things to change. All kinds of reasons to look at it. And again, we tell people, look, you don't have to understand the intimate. If you want to, we're certainly happy to explain to somebody. But really, you want to understand big picture what's going to happen, right? Big picture, you're not around. Where's your stuff go, and how does it get there? And do you need to have the details memorized? No, but you need to be able to process the information when it's discussed and presented to you. Yeah. So we'll talk about that real quick as we wrap up the irrevocable trust piece, which we will make as easy to understand.
Yeah, the irrevocable trust it's simple, and we'll say exactly why you do it, when you do it, and again, the conversation came up for last week's show because clients were like, "Oh yeah, just so you know, I did an irrevocable trust." I'm like, "Whoa, what? Like, why are you like? Who told you to do this?" I'll tell you who told you to do it. Some slapshot attorney, not anyone in this room, but someone who said, "Oh yeah, you definitely need that because then then you're going to save, or even better, your uncle." Or your brother-in-law or somebody who got some advice.
Yeah, you pump into it, doesn't really know what they're talking about.
All right, so we'll talk about all that when we come back from our break, the first break. So this is your time. Get a little coffee if you're listening in the kitchen. Maybe get yourself something to eat. We're going to try and stay low carb today. All right, so
this blood flow going, some jumping jacks.
That's right. If you want to, everybody do 10 push-ups, 10 sit-ups during the break, and then come back. We'll be right back on Money in the Law on My FM 101.3, Hollis Cable Access TV. Here in WMRC as well. Christian's here. We'll talk to Christian.
Man on the con.
We'll be right back.
All right. And you're back. Money in the Law on My FM 101.3. Jay Mars and Mars and Law Group. John Droham, Man Effort Financial. Christian manning the con. We were talking right before the break about irrevocable trusts. People overthink them. They talk about it. They worry about them. They don't understand them. This is very, very simple when it comes to an irrevocable trust. A revocable trust or revocable trust is all about control. You are still in control with a revocable trust. You can change it, you can amend it, you can get rid of it, you can do anything you want to do. You are still the boss. You can blow it up. Yep. Absolutely right. That's the revocable trust. And from a real world perspective, it accomplishes the number one goal, which we always talk about, is administer and manage your assets and avoid probate. But it gives you no protections. No protections. The biggest protection people ask about is Medicaid. Why does it give you no protections from Medicaid? Because remember, in the trust world, it's all about control. If you can take the money from the trust and go to Twin River or to Vegas or to the Florida Keys
or to the store,
rip through it, then that means that you can also take that money and pay for your nursing home. You can be sued and you can use that money can be taken from you because you can control it. If you can buy a car, you can pay your creditors. If you can do this, anything you can control, somebody else is going to say, well, you know what? I know you don't want to use it for that, but if you could use it for the good, then use it for the maybe not so good, right?
That's right.
So that's the idea. With the irrevocable trust, you take away all of your control. You give your assets, money, real estate, whatever it is, to somebody else, okay, the trustee, right now it's not you wearing the same hat, which we talked about initially in our meeting. You don't wear the trustee hat anymore. You're still the maker of the trust, but remember before with the revocable trust, you were the maker, you were the trustee, and you were the beneficiary while you were alive. Now, in an irrevocable trust, you are the maker of the trust, you are the giver away of the stuff, and that's it.
Yep.
You have no more job.
The way when we dumb it, well, actually, when it was dumbed down to me, when I was first introduced to this, it's like when again we go back to the box, right?
Yep.
The trust is a box, and the thing is when in a revocable trust, if I put the stuff in the box, and because it's revocable, I can take the stuff out, right?
Yep.
And in the case of an irrevocable trust, once I put that stuff in the box, like you said, it no longer belongs to me. It belongs to the box.
Yep.
The box is the owner. The box is the one that's so for all intents and purposes, and particularly like you mentioned for Medicaid purposes, when they go to say, okay, how much money do you have? How much money? What are your assets? And as you're applying to apply for Medicaid because you need to go or one of your loved ones needs to go into a nursing home, they're going to say, oh, well, here's my bank account. Here's my bank statement. They say, well, what about all that other money that you had 10 years ago? Well, what I did is I put that money along with my house into the box. And
That's
by
right.
putting it into the box, and because I was outside that time window, now that no longer belongs to me.
That's right. And to your point, if you think about it on the revocable side, you can put stuff in the box, you can take stuff out of the box. You can put stuff in the box, you can take stuff out of the box. On the irrevocable side, you put stuff in the box closes, the box gets locked up, and guess who doesn't have the key? You. You don't have the key. You have no control over whether or not the property inside that box can come back to you. Now, that doesn't mean that the person who has control is an adversary, right?
Yep.
It could be one of your kids, right? It could be your attorney. It could be a corporation. But it could be somebody who's friendly with you. But what makes the difference is you don't have the ability. There's no more strings attached to that money. So if you put $200,000 in your irrevocable trust and you make your kid the trustee, and then you say to your kid a week later, that was a bad idea, I want that money back, the kid may say to you, too bad.
Right.
And you have no
Legally,
leverage.
they could say that, right?
That's
Legally,
absolutely right.
Legally, they could
Yep.
say that.
You could say, I shouldn't have put that money in there, or I put too much in there, and I want to undo what I did. Now, I'm not saying your kid won't do that. What I'm saying is your kid is under no obligation to do that.
But
You are no longer in control.
But that's a great question. So, and we've seen this in the practice. So it's not as if it's like a box that's necessarily like a safe deposit box or a safe that I can't get into. So if I put my money into an irrevocable trust, and let's say I have my daughter as the trustee, and a year later, I need money for whatever reason. You know what? I really want to give your sister $50,000 of this money to help her buy a house. Now, it's not up to me, right? It's up to
Right.
it's up to the trustee. The trustee may turn around and say, "Okay." And again, remember we talked about last week. We talked about the instructions that are inside the
Yep.
box. So there's specific instructions that can be written, if I'm not mistaken, that can be written. Say, okay, at the trustee at their discretion can use this money for things that benefit the donor. If this happens, the trust is no more.
Well, that's right. So again, it's all about control, right? If it looks to the outside world like you put money in your irrevocable trust and then you're using it like an ATM machine, to the outside world who's going to look at how that money was handled, they're going to say, I know on paper it looks like you don't have any control, but all this money left the trust after you put it in there and your trustee gave it back to you. So now it's essentially, although it says it's irrevocable, because you've had control and you've been sort of messing around in this, it doesn't work, right? It's broken. It doesn't. You've exercised too much control and the plan fails, right? Because don't forget, there's three parties to a trust. There's you as the maker. There's the trustee who's in charge, the traffic cop for how everything works. And then there's beneficiaries, right? Now, again, if the beneficiaries are your kids and they're all playing ball, then they may more often than not have a problem with this arrangement, if you will.
Yeah.
But that breaks up the trust and doesn't really give it the irrevocable nature that you want to give it. But if there's people in that who are beneficiaries of that trust who were expecting to get that money because you put it in there.
It's messy.
Right? That could be a problem,
it's
right?
messy.
So because people always ask, in the meetings, somebody says, okay, Jay, I know it's, quote, they do air quotes. I know it's, which I'm doing right now. I know it's
Can't you see 'em
irrevocable.
on the radio?
It's irrevocable, right? But it's really not irrevocable, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, it's, you know, wink,
still
wink, wink,
get it,
right?
yeah.
It's this whole, like, you know, lawyer thing, right?
Winking at your lawyer.
And I go, look, I said, look, if it goes in the box, if it goes in the irrevocable trust, forget you own it. I said, just do yourself a favor and forget you own it. And by the way, once people start asking about all the get out of jail ways and how the back door works and all this other stuff, that's when we usually stop the conversation and say, let's explain this to you again, what we're trying to do here. This is money that you want to forget you own. It's like once you give it away. And one of the reasons that we do it this way is because you could also just give this money to people.
Yeah.
But the problem is when people get money and they all pinky promise that they're going to hang on to it in case you need it, life gets in the way.
Yeah, and there's
right?
no, and of course, we've talked about this, you know, there's no guarantee that, and again, it all comes back to like legal obligation. If you give money to somebody, they're not legally obligated to give it back to you, especially when you need it, right? And in the case of if you have to pay for long-term care, this is the primary reason of why you would use an irrevocable trust in the first place, right? So if I have, which I don't, but let's say I have, $50 million in my bank and my money, and I'm worth quite a bit of money. I'm worth a tremendous amount of money. Let's say, and to me, that's a tremendous amount of money. So, am I ever going to qualify for Medicaid?
No.
No. So the idea of me putting any of that money into an irrevocable trust, unless I just want to hide it from myself, unless I want to save myself, and where I'm not the trustee and I don't have control of it when I have all my faculties, it makes no sense.
Well, there may be reasons for doing it, right? There could be a whole host of reasons from a family dynamic perspective.
Well, right. If
putting money into something like that. But if the main purpose of doing it is to say, look, I want to get this stuff off my plate because I'm worried about a nursing home, you bring up a great point. We will say to people, look, given your assets, given what we're working with,
you're never going to qualify.
You're of means, and you're never going to qualify. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
We'll say, look,
doesn't matter.
It's never going to happen for you. And you have other ways to pay for something like this. Let's look at other solutions, and then this is probably not something that's in the cards. And let's take it off the plate.
Right, and oftentimes we'll use. They'll be like, "Well, I'm worried." So in many cases, we'll say, "Okay, if you're worried, let's put the last thing that you're going to use to help pay for your long-term care costs, your house, right? So you're going to stay in your house. Okay, we'll appease you. We'll say, okay, we'll put your house into an irrevocable trust, and that's great. And after 5 years, there's no look back. However, the $2 million that you have in the bank,
yes,
that's still there. And guess what? When you go to the nursing home and they start sending the $12,000 a month bill, then that's where the money's going to come from. It's going to come from there until it runs. Now, you may live in a nursing home and outrun $2 million. Probably not.
Nope,
but
that's right.
If you do, then guess what? You have protected your house. You've saved it. Yeah.
Well, you bring up a great point. I mean, in many cases, that's one of the things we'll say to people. If you have $2 million in your bank account, right, and you have a house, if we move the $2 million out of your bank account and we put it into an irrevocable trust, that leaves a mark. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, that hurts.
You're gonna wake up feeling a little weirder the next day because remember, you went to bed. I can write a $2 million check.
Oh, it's like a death in the family. I mean, it is. People are wearing black at the doc signing.
Yeah.
Everyone's crying. There's mourning going on. I mean, it's legit. People are depressed about. Wait a minute. So if I'm hearing you correctly, I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to take all the liquid assets that I've worked really hard over the course of my life, and I'm going to give it to my kid, who I kind of like, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I can't have any of that back. Absolutely right. Sign here, right?
No, or maybe it's built where it can generate an income for
That's
you. That's
the most you can do.
Yeah,
That's
right?
the most you can do.
So you put $1 million and the income it's going to generate, and it's going to generate $50,000 a year from you. So right now, before you did this, you were a millionaire.
Yeah,
your retirement, and you are a millionaire. And now once you put that money into the box, and in return, you're going to get a 5% return on that, and you're going to get $50,000 a year. Now you're on a fixed income.
Oh, and you're not a millionaire.
Not
exactly right.
anymore.
That's
Now,
exactly
now
right.
you can have your trust paperwork. You can have copies of it. I'm sure that your attorney, if you were at Marsden Law Group, they give you all the copies that you wanted of your trust, and you could go around. You could carry it with you. You go to the bar. You go to the club. You go to the golf club. You could show everybody. Hey, look, I got an irrevocable trust right here. You know, it's got $1 million in it, and it gives me money. And guess what? Guess what I got going for me? It's like the Dalai Lama, right? So I got this going for me. So if I ever end up in a nursing home, which is going to be awesome, then guess what? As long as I don't have to go within the next 5 years, they can't touch my $1 million.
I'm in the clear.
They can't touch. But what? And then perhaps he's talking. He's at he's playing golf and he's talking to an attorney, maybe somebody like you, and they'll say, "Oh, by the way, but guess what? You can't touch that $1 million right now."
No.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you can't.
So not only can the nursing home not touch that $1 million, neither can you.
Oh, and you can't after 5 years either. By the way, it doesn't magically become available to you,
No.
right? And the real estate piece of it, which is what you kind of started the segment off with, is the piece that if we have to pick and choose, that's where we pick and choose it. Because
Sure.
if I ask somebody right now, what does your deed at the registry say? They're going to go, I think it says that the house is in my name and my wife's name. I think, right? But nobody cares, right? Because it's not front and center, right? Nobody's taking their house away. So if you do something with your house, you change the ownership of your house, and you put it in the irrevocable trust, guess what? You can still go outside with the solar cover and drag it all over the yard to help melt all the snow. Nobody cares about that.
Which
right?
is probably what you're going to do first thing.
Well, if you put all your money in the trust as
You
well,
may
you won't have any money to do
anything. You'll be able to afford a
That's gonna
solar
become your
cover.
day.
Those things aren't cheap.
So that's part of what you're going to have. I mean, the house in a trust like that doesn't feel any different, right? You still mow the lawn, you still make the bed, you still clean the bathrooms, you still garden, you still shovel the driveway. Nothing's different. So that perspective, people say I'm a little more comfortable with that as part of my irrevocable trust strategy. Although I'm not in charge of it, I'm not in control of it, I do feel like I'm more in control of it because I'm using it every day. Nothing's changed. We see this a lot with vacation property, right? We put the Cape House in the irrevocable trust, and guess what happens? We still go to the Cape. We still go to the beach.
Nothing changed.
We still get sunburned.
We still get to pay the electric bill. We still get to pay the taxes.
All of those things are still available to you to do. So it doesn't feel different. You park $2 million or $1 million or a big chunk of your liquid assets in an irrevocable trust.
Your savings, right?
It feels different. It feels different.
And not only does it feel different, it is different. And particularly and this is the conversation we always have with retirees, because especially people who have had, well, I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break, because I'm on a roll.
You're on a roll. You're on a roll.
We'll talk about retirees then that like have been in some sort of a long-term care situation, like their parents or somebody, a loved one they know. So they've seen it. They've seen like firsthand what long-term care does and how it drains somebody's. So we'll talk about that when we come back on Money in the Law, My FM 101.3, and the Holliston Cable Access television show. It's not a show. This is a show.
Well, it's not a television show. It's a radio show on television.
Holliston Cable Access TV.
You don't understand how this works?
We're on both. We'll be right back.
And we're back. Money in the Law, My FM 101.3. Jay Marsden, Marsden Law Group, John Droham, NFR Financial. During the break, I was explaining to John the difference between radio and television. And I was talking about how one is words and one is pictures, and he's really kind of wrapping his head around it now, which is good because
why am I wearing a microphone here for the TV guy? Because there's words that are coming out.
I had to explain to John, by the way, that when people see us on TV, we're not actually inside that flat screen on their wall or back inside the box in the old days. It's a talking box, right? So it's a little different than that. We've moved far. So again, always great to see. It's always nice to be available when you see, when you see lights coming on for somebody. It's legendary.
Thank you for clearing that up for me.
It's great, fantastic. So welcome to the Talking Box. I'm Jay. This is John. So before the break, we're talking about irrevocable trusts.
Yep, we're talking about, but specifically what I was talking about is this conversation that we'll have with clients that have they're like, oh my God, I don't want to have what happened to my mother happen to us, or I don't want to have, we just don't, we saw them, they spent all their money, they lost it all. We don't want to do that. And fortunately or unfortunately, you're having that conversation up front, but here's the thing, and here's the trade-off. if I put money into the irrevocable trust, and again, we're not talking about the house. The house, as Jay explained in the last segment, that makes more sense, and it's easier to get your head around.
Feels different, yep.
And it's easier to deal with because nothing actually changes. Like life goes on just as you know it before it went into the trust and as it does afterwards. Now, the difference is if I'm putting my assets, if I'm putting money, so let's say we'll use the example of the $1 million. Let's say your lifelong savings, you have $1 million, and you want to put that $1 million into an irrevocable trust. And let's say you're 65 years old. Let's even say you're 70 years old, right? So you're 70 years old. I mean, depending, as long as you have like some sort of like health, and who knows, right? Even if your health isn't awesome, but it's good enough, right? And if it's really good, then it's even more of this conversation. We say, look, okay, you've worked your life to save this money. You've worked your life to have this money. So when you retire, which is what we are talking about right now.
Yeah.
This is what it's for. It's for you to be able to do what you want. And we say this in our practice all the time. The golden years, people, are real. Like no one knows how long they have. No one knows. No one knows when the piece of Skylab is going to hit them. So right now, and guess what? You don't have to you don't have to commute to Waltham anymore. You now are off. And guess what? You know what? You just went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Hey, you know what? We're lowering your blood pressure medication because you lost 15 pounds. You look great.
Yeah, not
drive
stressed
on,
out.
right?
Yeah, don't work anymore.
Keep going, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so here you are, and you have money, and you're fortunate to have money, and you're fortunate to be able to do things, and now you have the time to do it. So the last thing you want to do at that point is to restrict yourself and paint yourself into a corner for the possibility, not the guarantee, for the potential possibility that you may find yourself in a long-term care situation.
So one caveat to that, and then we'll move on because there's a topic that I want to at least touch on, and maybe we bring it to the next show next week. But working with your advisor, right? Working with the folks at Main Effort Financial. If you are hot to trot on the idea of an irrevocable trust for your liquid assets, a conversation that starts off something like, okay, let's talk about your income. Let's talk about how much money you have. Let's talk about what you're getting for lifetime income sources. Let's talk about how much money you're going to need, okay? And then once we do all that math, at the end of that, we'll have an idea of, do I have extra money, right? Because you only want to do this with extra money.
You want to do it with the money that you're not going to spend.
That you're right. Yeah, and again, you can't predict for everything, but that's part of the plan, right?
Sure.
You guys always talk about plan for a purpose, right? Have a plan for your money. So you can sit down, and you can sort of spin out, what your income needs might look like over the next X numbers of years, right? Depending on how old you are. You can say, look, 20 years of income is going to cost me this much money based on what I have, and I did all the math, and what that means is I have an extra 50, 75, whatever that number is, $100,000. This is the money that I can target to go into something like an irrevocable trust along with my real estate so that I have all the income I need, I can live my life, I can do what I want to do, I'm not going to impoverish myself, and then all those things being equal, I've tucked aside a little bit of a nest egg for my family that if I ever go down the nursing home path or I ever find myself in a position, this money is at least my legacy.
Yeah, we look at it in terms of if that money went away tomorrow, what changes? Other than the fact that you got a serious case of your fourth point of contact and you're pissed.
Yep.
Like I lost $100,000 on this I won't say in Vegas. If you lost $100,000 in Vegas, we need to have a different conversation.
That's right. That's a different.
But
meeting.
let's say you did a real estate deal with your brother and you took a bath. The both of you took a bath. Oh, really? This is a great condo. It's down here in Panama. Condominiums are going really cheap.
Yep.
And whatever. You lost a significant amount of money, but it doesn't change anything. It's not going to change your retirement. It's not going to change your glide path. So this is money that really you don't need. That you don't need right now, and you don't think you're going to need in the future. I mean, if you had it in the future, maybe it might come in handy. But again, that's the decision that you make right at this point. And get some outside advice. Get somebody who can kind of talk to you and kind of map it out for you, who doesn't have any skin in the game, right? Because they're not. You may say, when you talk to your estate planning attorney and you say, listen, all I want to do is save some money for my kids. I want to save money. I want to save money because if I go into a nursing home, your estate planning attorney like that's all well and good, but guess what? if you go into it, whether you go into a nursing home or not, it's not going to matter. You're still going to spend. You're still going to spend your money. And if you don't have, if you move money into an irrevocable trust, you may find yourself in a long-term care situation where you may want to stay in assisted living. And
Well, that's right. You may never get there. You may never go down the nursing home path. I mean, again, ideally, it's incremental journey, right?
Yeah.
At some point, you say to yourself, "Okay, I'm getting more frail, right? And I can't be home as much. I can't be home without
Speak for
services
yourself.
anymore,
I
right?
get more
Or I can't be home without services coming in. I need more services coming in. So you do that. You bring services in so you can stay in your home. You can age in place, right? That's always the emphasis. And we always tell our clients, look, our objective is to keep you in the most independent setting we can possibly keep you in, right? That's the objective for everybody, right? Keep you in the most independent setting we can keep you in. And if it's home with services, that's fantastic. But to your point, if at some point that doesn't work anymore, let's not race you right to the nursing home. Let's move you along. Let's get you to an assisted living facility, right? That may play out for quite some time. Because first of all, when you're home by yourself, at some point your eating habits change, your timing of your medication is different.
Right.
If you're having some cognitive issues, you might not even take your medication every day, you might skip your medication, and so things are all out of kilter, right? You go to an assisted living facility and there's med reminders and there's a conversation that says, look,
Yeah.
you're taking the medication every day at 10 o'clock, and by the time you take it tomorrow at 10 o'clock, it'll have worked its job, it'll have done its job, and you'll be on a much more even, a better, flatter continuum in terms of everything. The food is better. You hear this all the time from people. My mother or my father went to an assisted living facility, and now they're getting their meds at the same time every day. They're not overtaking. They're not undertaking. The meals are better. There's some cognitive stimulation going on. They're really thriving at the assisted living, and we thought they weren't going to do it. We thought it was going to be miserable, and they really like it.
Yep. And remember that the other part of this is, yeah, and we always say this, right? Like, we get it. Like, we understand you don't want to give all your money to an assisted living place.
Nope,
you don't want to give all your money to a nursing home. In the perfect world, that's not what you want. But remember, it costs money to live, right?
That's right.
So if you have, make a number up, $200,000, and you're like, let's say that's what you have in your bank account. You're like, I have $200,000, and I'm 80 years old, and right now I'm fine. I'm good to go. Like I can still drive. I still see my grandkids all the time. I buy Christmas presents and all that stuff. I own a house. I'm not going into a nursing home anytime soon. Now that could change, but right now I'm right where I am. And someone says to me, "Oh, I want to put that into an irrevocable trust in the case that I find myself in a long-term care situation." I'd be like, no, like, you know what? Because I know you want to give that to your kids, but even if you end up in an assisted living place, like Jay said, this is your money.
That's right.
This is money that can be used for you. And you know what? If it's a little bit pricey, but it's better for you, then, if your family cares about you, if your kids that you want to leave this money to care about you, then guess what? That's the best place for it.
Well, and we can have a conversation about all the options around that, right? So, for example, there may be a situation that says, well, I want to protect this money for my kids because, and then you start to ask questions. Well, is it for all your kids? And then maybe you get a sense that, well, there's really one particular kid that you want to make sure he gets some money because they've struggled a certain bit, to a certain extent, and you want to make sure you can take care of them, but you don't want to leave your other kid out. You want to treat them equally, and again, so we try to uncover a lot of these issues because, to John's point, in many cases, we're not trying to talk you out of things, right? At the end of the day, the clients are the ones that make the call. It's our job to lay out all the options for them. But laying out all the options means laying out the pros and the cons, right? And this type of planning, when you're planning for what you think is the worst case scenario, while I understand the need to do that, because, by the way, the industries, if you will, whether it's the financial services industry or the legal industry, they have driven the fear of these things so high. They've turned the volume up on these issues so high that everyone's convinced they're going. And that doesn't necessarily always end up the case. So you really have to figure out what's our plan, right?
Right.
And to your point, if the plan is, look, we're going to try to be home, right? And by the way, the answer might be, look, don't give up the $200,000, right? Don't give up access to that. How about the house, right? Yeah. Talk about that. Is there a way to structure this so that you can be home as long as you can be and get some protections in the house? And then when you say to somebody, oh, you know what? It doesn't have to be all, right? You can pick and choose. If you're leaving your kids the equity in your property and you leave this $200 out to spend on yourself,
then they're getting something.
people can say, you know what? I like that idea.
Yeah.
I don't impoverish myself. I can use my money to do what I want to do. I can still pay for birthday presents. I can still go out to dinner. I can still be social. I can still have a life. And then I know that
Still buy beers for the guys down at the VFW.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And then at that point, I know my house is going to go to my kids, and I've left a legacy. I've given them a head start that you either are unable to get yourself or that you always wanted to see your kids getting. That's a huge, huge impact. And we tell people all the time, a little bit is better than the problems that might come down the road if you try to cram all of this into a point where you don't have any access.
And you paint yourself into a corner. Exactly.
We've had these conversations. I had a client one time, sat down. So she had lost her husband, and we sat down and we started going through all of her assets, and we talked about everything. And she said, all right, well, so now that my husband's gone, I've lost his income, and now I need to figure out what I'm going to have for income, and I need to tap into all these assets to use to live my life. I said, well, I get some good news and I get some bad news. The good news is you have all these assets. The bad news is you can't use them to live your life. And she said, what do you mean? I said, you put everything, I mean everything, in your irrevocable trust. You overfunded your irrevocable trust.
Overfunded.
What does that mean? I said, that means that you don't have the income that you thought you were going to have. We have potentially, an issue here that we need to kind of unbox and figure this out.
You don't have the income because remember that because now we talked about it. Now you can blow that trust up, right? There's if it's written in such a way and the trustee is
well, everybody has to be on board.
Everybody has the ability to do it.
Everybody has
then
to
you
be
can
on
blow
board.
the trust up. But then when you do that, then all the reason that you put that money in the trust in the first place goes away. So that means now all that money is exposed. It becomes your money, or you have control over it. So when you go, if you ever in a Medicaid situation where you go to apply for Medicaid, they're going to say no way. They're going to say you can apply for Medicaid all day after that money's done.
Well, and don't forget, if you think, oh well, you know what, what's the big deal? Let's use your analogy, right? I overfund my irrevocable trust, and I heard those guys on the radio say, even if I overfunded it, I could always blow it up and get everything back and blah, blah, blah. So give me some of it back, right? I overfunded it by $100,000. I want $100,000 back, right? It's
all or nothing.
In some respects, it's a one-way street, meaning if it came out once in your direction, it can all come out once in your direction. And then, to your point, the Medicaid folks are going to say, you funded it with $200. There's only $100 left in it. What'd you do with the other $100? Oh, I needed it back. I made a mistake. They're going to say, well, you know what? Guess what? You're going to make another mistake. That's the other $100,000, and the whole reason you did this doesn't work, right? I'd rather have you underfunded and be comfortable with the amount that you put in and have it not blow up the rest of your plan than have you fund this thing and then say, oh, that was too much. We made a mistake. Now we got to do something different, right?
All right. I hope everybody took notes. I think we're going to have to get to Luke next week.
I think that's fine because you know what? I think it's too important a topic to just rush through. We'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, we will give the great late Luke Perry his own
due.
special.
We'll give his due. Give him his due. So that'll be next week on Money in the Law. Right. We'll talk about
and we're heading down that one-way street.
Celebrity estate planning stories.
Which way does it go?
It's
any way I want. All right, we'll be back next week on Money in Law. Jay Marsden from the Marsden Law Group. Everybody give him a big hand.
Yeah, big round.
If we had a studio audience, they would.
Of course they would. Yes, they would.
I'm John Drowan from Main Effort Financial. Christian Boudet from Hollis & Cable Access TV.
Christian, slow clapping us out.
We will see everybody next week. Everybody have a great week.
I think that was the Pelosi clap.